The pro football game in the States and Canada in the 1950s and 60s had a lot of crossover stars, players that either went from the CFL to the NFL or the NFL to the CFL. But in this case, this great star went from the start of the CFL. It was a rugby league at the time, or called a rugby league, and went to the AFL and broke tons of records and was an icon for the black athlete in his generation. Of course, we're going to have to talk about the great halfback Cookie Gilchrist. Now, born in Brackenridge, Pennsylvania, May 25th, 1935. He was named the AFL's most valuable player with the Bills in '62, and it was named to the AFL's all-time team. Now, he played again in the AFL and the CFL. Now, a star player, he came to major prominence with Brack High School in Natrona Heights, Pennsylvania. In 1953, he led the team to the WPIAL co-championship with Donora. As a junior, he was talked into signing a professional football contract with the NFL's Cleveland Browns by team founder Paul Brown. The signing was against NFL rules and likely illegal, and when Brown reneged on his promise that Gilchrist would make the team, he left training camp at Hiram College in Hiram, Ohio, and went to Canada to play. There, in the Ontario Rugby Football Union, or the ORFU, he received the Jim Shanks Team MVP trophy for the Sarnia Imperials in 1954 and the Kitchener-Waterloo Dutchman's Team MVP award in 1955. Now, in 1956, he joined the Canadian Football League with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, helping them lead them to a 1957 Grey Cup victory. He would play defense, he was a kicker, and again, strong on offense. He eventually spent one season with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, rushing for 1,254 yards. He was then traded to Toronto Argos for Tex Schweier and played 3 years in the Big T. In his 6 years in the CFL, he was a divisional all-star and running back 5 consecutive years from 56 to 60, as there were no All-Canadians selected in those years, and was also an Eastern All-Star linebacker in 1960. Additionally, in 1960, he was runner-up for the CFL's Most Outstanding Player Award. In his CFL career, he recorded 4,911 rushing yards, 1,068 receiving yards, and 12 interceptions. Now, Gilchrist joined the roster of the Buffalo Bills of fledgling AFL soon after. Incidentally, Gilchrist was Buffalo's backup plan. They had actually drafted Ernie Davis to be the team's franchise running back, and Davis instead chose the NFL, but due to a cancer diagnosis of leukemia before even playing a down of professional football, his career and his life came to a tragic end. The Bills instead signed Gilchrist as a free agent. While with Buffalo, Gilchrist played fullback and kicked, though he insisted he could have played both ways. He was the first 1,000-yard AFL rusher with 1,096 yards in a 14-game schedule in '62. That year, he set the all-time AFL record for touchdowns with 13 and earned AFL MVP honors. Gilchrist rushed for a professional football record 243 yards and 5 TDs in a single game against the Jets in '63. Though he was with the Bills for only 3 years, between '62 and '64, he remains the team's 9th leading rusher all time. He led the squad in scoring in each of his 3 years as a Bill. He also ran for 122 yards in the Bills' '64 AFL title defeat of the Chargers, 20-7. His 4.5-yard rush average is second as a Bill, only to O.J. Simpson. Now, one of Gilchrist's strengths was blocking. His blocking was mentioned by broadcaster and ex-coach John Madden during a CBS TV broadcast in the '87 campaign, saying Cookie may have been the best blocking running back that ever played the game. Now, in an early civil rights victory for black athletes, he also led a successful boycott of New Orleans as the site of the '65 AFL All-Star Game. He's the only athlete to turn down being enshrined into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame Museum because of what he described as racism and exploitation by management. However, Gilchrist had stated before his death that he never turned down the Hall, instead stating that it was not that simple. When he was informed about being nominated by the Hall by John Argo, counsel for the CFLPA, he was told to be nice to Jake Goddard, his CFL commissioner, and Gilchrist stated that he would take it under advisement due to his strained relations with Goddard, while also expressing the belief that Canada had treated him as a persona non grata from 1956 to 2010. Now, Gilchrist frequently was at odds with team management. He told a reporter from the London, Ontario Free Press that most of the problems he encountered were resulted in standing up for principles at a time when black athletes were expected to remain silent. As in the case, take the field, you should be glad to have a job, whether it's Canada or the States. But I know throughout the years the CFL has kind of, not say blacklisted Gilchrist, but hasn't talked about him as much as other black stars in that era of the CFL. Now, Gilchrist was eventually traded to the Denver Broncos before the 65 season in exchange for fullback Jim Billy Joe in cash. He played for the Broncos in 65 and 67 and for the Dolphins in 66. He was sent to the man who started his career, Paul Brown, in the Cincinnati Bengals expansion draft in 68, but retired because of knee problems. He was an AFL League All-Star in 62, 63, 64, and 65, making him one of only few professional football players who made their league's All-Star squad for 10 consecutive years, 6 in the CFL and 4 in the AFL. He was selected as a fullback of the all-time American Football League team. The Professional Football Researchers Association also named Gilchrist to the PRFA Hall of Very Good class of 2013. Now, he was named to the Bills Wall of Fame during the team's home game on October 29, 2017 against longtime rivals, the Oakland Raiders. Now, with Sarni's first season, 11 games, 5 TDs on 845 yards rushing, 9 receptions, 85 yards combined, 3 TDs. He also kicked in for the Kitchener Dutchman in 55, and that year he had field goal attempts, 16, but only 5 made. Hamilton Tiger Cats, 832 yards, 2 TDs receiving and rushing. Hamilton Tiger Cats in 57, 958 yards, 7 touchdowns, rushing. Rough Riders, the big season, 5.3 yards per carry, 1254, 5 TDs rushing, 144 yards receiving. Argos in 59, 496 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown. Argos in 1960, 6 TDs rushing, 2 receiving, 662 rushing yards, 61 with the Argos, 709 yards. These were 12 to 14 game seasons each year. 3 touchdowns rushing, 2 receiving, and again he was a part-time kicker for Kitchener, Hamilton, and Toronto. Now with the Bills again, those 3 seasons, 1,096, 979 and 981 yards, 62, 63, 64, 13, 12 and 6 touchdowns rushing, and again dynamite numbers across the board. Now he also did some defensive play at the time as well. Broncos in 65, 954 yards. Dolphins in 66, 26 yards. And in one game with the Broncos in 67, he had 10 rushes for 21 yards, and his last reception as a player. So CFL totals, 4,911 yards on 849 carries. AFL totals, 4,293 yards on 1,010 carries. So career, 1,859 rushes for 9,204 yards, 65 touchdowns, and on the receiving side, tremendous numbers, 11 touchdowns, 2,203 yards. Now, ironically, in 1974, as an expansion of his civil rights work, he founded the United Athletics Coalition of America to help former football players adjust to life after retirement. In 75, he booked Marvin Gaye, Ike and Tina Turner Review in the Tavares for a benefit concert at MLG in Toronto. Now, Gilchrist, he had some rough going too. He had numerous feuds with the people he worked with during his football career. Again, refused entry to CFL Hall of Fame because he did not believe he was paid well enough for his service. He also refused to accept enshrinement on the Buffalo Bills Wall of Fame because he wanted payment for appearing. Van Miller eventually convinced Gilchrist to change his mind, but Gilchrist was not inducted prior to his death. Gilchrist was possibly inducted in the Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame in 2011. He did accept induction onto the Bills Wall of Honor, the predecessor to the Wall of Fame that had been set up at War Memorial Stadium in 1970, but none of these honorees on that wall were carried over to Rich Stadium when it was built in 73. Now again, on August 30, 2017, it was announced that he would be inducted into the Buffalo Bills Wall of Fame. Now, in an article in Buffalo News on March 18, 2007, Gilchrist, then 71, announced that he was being treated for throat cancer. At the time, he lived in Natrona Heights, Pennsylvania. Now, on January 10, 2011, Gilchrist died of an assisted living facility in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was possibly diagnosed with stage 4 CTE, which may explain in part some of his behavioral difficulties. He was aware of the possibility that he had the disease when writing his autobiography, The Cookie Did Not Crumble, along with Chris Gabarino. Consequently, he donated his brain to the Canadian Sports Concussion Project for use in their study of CTE. He is one of at least 345 NFL players to be diagnosed after death with this disease, which is caused by repeated hits to the head. Again, honors. Buffalo Bills Wall of Fame. First American Football League player to gain over 1,000 yards in a season. 14 contests, 1,096 yards in 62. He previously held the American Pro Football record for most yards rushing a game, 243 versus the Jets on December 8, 63. His number 34 has been officially retired by the Bills to honor both him and Thurman Thomas, who also wore the number. And he was honored by the Professional Football Research Association Hall of Very Good, a collection of outstanding pro football players not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as part of his 2013 class. Now, again, just to recap here. 6'3", 251. Some days he would be 270. He was just, a ball coming down the hill. Cleveland, 54. Again, off-season practice squad. Sarnia Imperials. Kitchener-Waterloo Dutchmen. Hamilton Tiger Cats. Saskatchewan Roughriders. Toronto Argos. Buffalo Bills. Denver Broncos. Miami Dolphins. Denver Broncos again. Now, AFL champion 64, AFL MVP in 62, three-time first-team All-AFL 62, 64, 65, four-time AFL All-Star 62 to 65, two-time AFL rushing yards leader 62 and 64, four-time AFL rushing touchdowns leader 62 to 65, AFL all-time team, Grey Cup champion 57, again with the Ticats, and Buffalo Bills Wall of Fame. The idea about his stats, ladies and gentlemen, don't tell the whole story, because he was a multiple performer in many genres. Now, I still don't see much by the CFL about Cookie Gilchrist, because maybe they're scared his ghost would come back and criticize. But I mean, you look at George Reed, how he's been recognized as a black athlete. So no offense, it's great that George Reed has been given his legacy by giving the MVP naming just this past year, but there should be more recognition of Cookie Gilchrist. If you're a CFL fan, it demands it, because he had just as much success in the CFL as he had in the AFL. But to be a three-way player as he was, it was just tremendous. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing with our CFL and NFL and AFL Vintage podcast, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you're only good as your last touchdown. Have a good one. Bye.